I think I'm going to make a cocktail of two talks, by the way, just using the same cocktail. And since I've seen the slide and the movies before, I have to tell you something about AI. You know, I wasn't intended to tell you so much about AI, but I'm going to make a part of my talk dedicated to what's happening with AI, artificial intelligence. You know, AI is the nickname for artificial intelligence. And it's such a hypey domain these years, you know, a lot. We heard a lot about AI, and there might be some reasons for that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about AI, but that was not initially what I had in mind. What I had in mind initially is to let us try to think about a world to come where the governance will be given to algorithms, no more to human beings, and we will go through a kind of algorithmic subordination. You know, I'm going to try to describe this kind of world. Like it or not, this is anyway the world we're going through these times. So I'll show you that the technologies exist for governing the world. I'll show you that there is indeed a lot of delicate topics, you know, that philosophers have to face. You know, do we agree to entrust our lives to algorithms instead of human beings? Do we agree to give the legislative and executive power to algorithms instead of politicians or instead of lawyers? And there will be a key question that I'll finish my talk with is, okay, if we agree that our algorithms should rule our lives, who's going to be in charge of writing the codes? Okay, so this is plan of my talks. So first, this idea that we are more and more entrusting our life to algorithms, and perhaps for a good cause, perhaps for good reasons, you know. So I'm going to defend this idea, you know, until a certain point. And then obviously I'm really eager to receive your criticism and questions about it, because obviously it raised a lot of issues, it raised a lot of debate, this idea that the algorithm should rule our lives. So the reason why I do defend these ideas is because there's two findings, you know, two things that we might all agree on, is that these last 10, 20 years we're going through very difficult times. I believe one of the reasons is that the world is being more and more complex. You know, when you're a computer scientist, when you're a physicist, what you usually call complexity is this idea that the whole is more than the sum of the parts. You put a lot of things that, you know, when they are isolated, they can be easily regulated, they can be easily controlled, but when you put them all together, then there's a kind of loss of control, okay? So for instance, the sum of the individual interests doesn't satisfy a collective whole, you know, the famous free passengers, the free riders who made that impossible. When you try to join short-term objectives in time, you're not always fulfilling the long-term objectives, you know, so combining local realities doesn't give you a satisfactory whole. So the world is being more and more complex. And we have this sense of loss of control, and together with this loss of control, we're going through many threats. You know, we're subject to many threatening situations, like the environmental threat, the more important tragedies of commons that we're going through these years, this last 10, 20 years, is, you know, the warming effect. You know, the planet is being warmer and warmer. This is typically tragedy of commons. The economical crisis. Most of our economical systems are being very weak, you know, systematically weak, you know, like the bank who owns money to each other. And what do? You get the subprime crisis, because it's enough for one bank, big bank, to collapse, and just within, you know, there's a lot of banks that just follow it. Inequality exploding. Societal crisis, you know, communitarian fragmentation, a lot of crises we're going through. And not only you have this feeling of, you know, who is in charge, who is controlling this world, but more and more we go through a kind of political defiance, you know, against our you know, classical way of doing politics. You know, you just have to, I'm Italian, you just have to see the result of Italian elections. You know, we don't believe anymore that the human politics can, you know, control this world. So this is the first checking, this is the first fact. And I guess you might share this, you know, it's a black feeling, you know, it's a black fact. And then I am a computer scientist. And, you know, I'm you know, and then there's a kind of positive and good news. You have these last 50 years, there's been an incredible amount of software opportunities for ruling this world. You know, we build super intelligent softwares. Who is the best Go player? Who is the best chess player? Who is the best player in a Jeopardy, you know, this famous TV game in the United States? It's computers that can answer any kind of questions, kind of encyclopedic knowledge of anything. Who is the best driver? Who is the best, doctors in the radiotherapist sense, or recognizing tumors or whatever? They're computers. This computer is reaching an incredible, level of intelligence. They are everywhere. Any object can be transformed in the computer. This idea of Internet of Objects. You can put computers in your teeth brush. You can put computers in your clothes. You can put computers in anything you eat. You can put computers everywhere, not only computers, but intelligent computers. So you can connect the world with a bunch of computers. In 2 or 3 years from now, we will have billions of computers, which is called the Internet of Objects. And these computers can collaborate. They can synchronize what they do. They can exchange messages. They can try to organize themselves. And you don't have to be convinced. You know that nearly every second of your life today is dictated by an algorithm. You take your car, it's a bunch of algorithms. The GPS is driving you. Your smartphone, you use it every day. It's a bunch of algorithms. The news you see, the things you look at, it's all algorithms, okay? So algorithms are everywhere, and the power that is being taken by the GAFA these last 10 years, who seems to be dictating and ruling the world. So when you have that two findings, the difficulty we're going through in the world and these opportunities that software can provide us with in order to regain control, then you can try, in fact, to connect both. So could we entrust our life to algorithms? So, well, if you think in terms of law, if you think in terms of human law, if you think in terms of governance, human governance, basic idea of human governance is, believe me or not, and I'm being a bit rough here, a bit trash, is to restrict our freedom to make the world a better place. Okay, restrict our freedom to make the world a better place. Can algorithms do the same thing, restrict our freedom, but for the benefit of the whole? So that just give me examples of that, but you certainly will not complain about it. My university, who have, public toilets, I get in, the light just turn on, I get off, the light just turn off, okay, no complaints about that. I do whatever I need to do in the toilets, and there is this flush water, just the minimal amount of water for erasing, my little passage. No complaint about it. Everything is being ruled by algorithms, and that provide a saving of resource, a saving of electricity, a saving of water. It's an algorithmic control of our daily life, and it seems to be okay. You might argue that there is a little bit of restriction of freedom because you don't have the possibility to press on things, you don't press on the flush wire or you don't press on the interrupters, but okay, no big deal if you save electricity or if you save water. When you go in public transportation, you go in the subway and you have a whole amount of material device to force you to pay for your public transport, because transport is a public good and someone has to be paid for, and so you have a lot of amount of materials in order for you to acquire this public transportation. This is just an algorithmic control of our life. In Belgium, we have a very interesting platform called Tax on Web. Certainly fulfill Tax on Web. Tax on Web is interesting, not because it makes your life easier with respect to carbon and paper and pencil and paper. It's on the web, so to some extent it's easier. But there's another thing that people tend to deny or tend to neglect is the fact that most, not all of them, but a lot of the rubrics, a lot of the slots are already filled. And they're not only filled, but you can't cancel them. You can go and change them. For instance, your salary, it's blocked, it's locked, all right? So it's, a lack of freedom. But it's a lack of freedom for the common good, because we do have to pay, to some extent, we do have to pay our taxes. So in order for forcing you to pay your taxes, things are already locked in. Another example is the domotic things. We put more and more intelligent thermostat in our houses, and those thermostats, so far they're still controlled by human beings, but we can easily imagine a world where the thermostat will control you, telling you, you can't make your clothes washing right now because you don't produce enough electricity with your solar panels, so wait for tomorrow, or wait for your neighbors to produce enough. So to have a control on the way we consume energy. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? We have a technology for doing it, And last example is not yet on our road, but we're not far from it, is autonomous driving. An autonomous car is a very interesting example, because if you think about autonomous car, when there will be full autonomous cars in our cities, we don't need any traffic laws anymore. We don't need any traffic lights. We don't need any panels. Why that? Because the traffic laws were addressed to who? They're addressed to human beings. They're addressed to human drivers. It's completely meaningless for a bunch of cars, for a bunch of trucks, or a bunch of buses to have traffic laws. They synchronize their behaviors, you know. They don't have to, for instance, the right priority is something which is totally meaningless. And I believe that we're going to a world where more and more of the laws, like the traffic laws, were fought, you know, to the destiny of human, you know. Once you put algorithms in place, there is no way for human to violate the laws because the algorithm are forcing you to obey the laws. So there is a lot of signalization that would just disappear. And I don't think autonomous car is a good idea. I believe that, you know, I was in Washington just a year ago, and there is a fantastic minibus called Oli. This is just an AI thing. This is an Oli bus, which is in fact built by a 3D printer. You can go on YouTube and visualize it. And I believe that this is the future of public transportation. Now autonomous car. I think autonomous car is completely meaningless. Just a step in time that will disappear because I think cars will disappear. But this minibus is fantastic. You get into it. It drives you, and you can even speak to him. You can tell him, you know, do you know about a Chinese restaurant close to here? And if it's not a big detour, you know, he will drive you to the Chinese restaurant, you know. And that is an incredible achievement, and it's built by you, by the way. And this is another important thing I will come back on later on, is the fact that the algorithms to build this bus has been done by citizens, you know, not by scientists, you know, by kind of coding platforms. So the technologies exist. Well, this is the easiest thing for me to convince you about. You know, for instance, in my lab, we're working on applications to make the mobility in Brussels not the nightmare that it has become. I think you would all agree that, you know, driving in Brussels or whatever, circulating in Brussels has become a nightmare. And one of the reasons why it has become a nightmare is because there's a lot of interesting initiatives in Brussels, like car sharing. Every week we learn about a new way of car sharing, bike sharing, you share everything. But with all those sharing things, you know, there's no way to circulate in Brussels because, you know, they all come with their own initiative, but there's no way, you know, way to coordinate that. And in my lab, we're doing applications. This is an interesting, apps that you can download called Join. And it is an intermodality application. So you just say, I want to go from point A to point B, and give me the best, you know, the most fastest way. And there's a lot of solutions. And it's a very interesting software because we have a problem with this software is in fact to put inside two types of objectives. Your individual objectives, you know, you want to reach point B in the fastest way, but not only that, you have also to combine your individual interest with the common good. What is good for the city? What is good for the whole society? You know, a lot of people tend to forget that. In fact, one of the things I'm going to critique a lot during my talk is the fact that we entrust our life to algorithms, but not only to algorithms, we entrust our life to Google. Who is ruling the transportation in Brussels these days? Google Maps, Waze. Is that normal? No. No, public transportation is a public good. It shouldn't be dedicated to a private sector like Google. Google has no way, you know, Google has no interest in the common goods. You know, Google has just interest in the individual, you know, individual satisfaction. In fact, I think we have to regain control, and this is ways of regaining control. So this is a software for, and it's full of AI. For instance, this is a piece of a description of a software. We build trees of solution. If you're a little bit familiar with AI, this is the old AI, the old artificial intelligence, where you have to compare alternative solutions. You know, you can go that, you can take this modality, you can go by bike, you can go by car, and you compute the cost of all the solutions, and then you select the best one. AI is a lot like that, you know, finding good solution in a very complex problem. And this is a very complex problem. Also because we try to take into account not only driving, but also when you take your car, what is the situation of the parking in the place where you want to go. Because it's good to be there, but if you can't park your car, it's completely meaningless to take your car. You know? And this is kind of thing that Google can't put in its software because they don't completely know the local situation. And they don't put any societal objectives. You know, I was surprised to hear that Waze has completely modified the circulation in Belgium. There's little villages that was never crossed by car before Waze, and now they've just become highway because Waze has decided that all of us should go through this little village that have never seen a car before. You know, this is typically what we should reject. We shouldn't accept that kind of situation. So another technology that I liked a lot, and I think should take the lead in the energy consumption, energy production, is smart grid. When you have smart somewhere, you can put AI, it's synonymous. And why so? Because you have to regulate this exchange of energy between neighbors. You know, you produce your own energy, and you produce it not only for your own needs, but also for the needs of your neighbors, and then you exchange this energy. And we're building software for doing so in my lab. Well, we are famous in the lab for what is called swarm robots. And typically, we try to regulate a lot of decentralized things, you know. And Marco Dorigo and other people are doing that in the lab. And so when you have a lot of local actors, how to coordinate these local actors. And in fact, it's one of the problems of smart grid. And in the smart grid, again, you have to combine both things, your individual needs, but also the collective goods. You know, what is good for the planet, what is good for the society as a whole for the consumption and production of energy. A last example I'm very fan of is obviously the blockchain. You've certainly heard a lot about the blockchain. The blockchain is the idea that you don't need any human confidence. You know, normally, what is called in French a tiers de confiance is a guy who makes a contract valid, who is sure that the contract will be executed in the due time, and who write the contract. This is normally human beings. More and more with this idea of blockchain, we entrust the confidence to algorithms, not only to algorithms, but also to the internet as a whole. You know, internet plus algorithm inside are ensuring that the contract will be executed in due time, in right time, etc. And you know that the blockchain is what made the Bitcoin famous cryptocurrency, the Bitcoin running, you know, and you heard a lot about the Bitcoin, but I believe that in the Bitcoin is not the most interesting part. In fact, the Bitcoin is the most boring part, you know, with this speculation around. It's really incredible, and I don't like that aspect of the Bitcoin. What is fascinating in the Bitcoin is really the blockchain chapter of it, you know, because this is the idea, again, that an algorithm can rule our life and make us behave better, because it is impossible to fraud the blockchain. And many people have tried. You heard about a lot of fraud with the Bitcoins, but you never heard about a lot of fraud with the blockchain, because so far the blockchain has remained incorruptible and invulnerable. You know, that is an incredible achievement in terms of algorithm. No one has succeeded to modify it in a kind of a defective way. And the last very interesting thing with respect to the blockchain is that it is an open, and it's really important in my talk when, you know, when I was thinking about when I was saying who is writing the code. You know who is writing the blockchain? You. We all write the blockchain. Obviously, you need to know a little bit of computer science, but all of us can contribute to the blockchain. So all of us can write these algorithms that are ruling us. You know. And just for an anecdote, 3 of the researchers in my lab created the Bitcoin Belgium Association. They were very fan of Bitcoin in a time when I didn't believe that the Bitcoin would become what it has become. In fact, these 3 guys, they don't need to work anymore. You can imagine why. I'm the only one remaining in the lab. I still have to earn his money. They made the right choice, the right decision at the right time. All right, so let me just jump a little bit on AI for telling you in 5 minutes what is happening in AI. You know, this AI that I'm just here speaking about. There's been a key bifurcation in AI this last 5 or 6 years. They've always been 2 AI, the machine learning AI and the not machine learning one. I used to do a lot of non-machine learning AI. In fact, this transportation problem is a not machine. In fact, when you use your GPS, there is no machine learning inside. Watson, this famous software that was able to answer any kind of question in a kind of a TV game, there was no machine learning inside. So why is machine learning become so popular in AI? In fact, many people make a kind of a pure equivalence between AI and machine learning, which is plain wrong. You know, AI is not only machine learning, but machine learning has turned out to be so popular. Why is it so? Well, if you think about driving a car, well, nearly 30 years ago, I was doing a part of my PhD in Carnegie Mellon, and I was doing self-driving car. And the software I was planning for the car was the following one. We just put a camera on the front end of the car, and we just record everything that the driver was supposed to see. And I was recording everything the driver was doing. So press the pedal, turn the wheel, etc. And so I was creating at the time a huge big data with everything the drivers see, everything the drivers do. And what I did is to put that in the neural networks. And so teach the neural network to replicate the human driver's actions. And once he did that, once he was able to imitate any human drivers, we put it in the car, and it drives as well as the human drivers. There was no intelligence in that. In fact, when you think about driving a complex process, no engineer will do that in this way. An engineer will typically do a kind of mathematical model of the process, try to do a mathematical, this kind of thing, but don't ask me to understand. This is what I've seen in books of control, but I don't understand a word of that. But this is typically a mathematical model of the process, a mathematical model of the objective that the process has to fulfill. In the case of a car would be just don't bump into any obstacles, save a lot of energy, whatever. And then you try to resolve that. Forget for the cars. Forget for the car. You can control the level of a tank with that kind of theory, but it's impossible for the car. It's too complex. Can you imagine make a model of a car in the Montgomery Square at 8 o'clock in the morning? Forget, it's too complex. And when you face this complexity, this is where human big data and machine learning come into the place. This is one of my favorite. This autonomous car had a fee just 1 year ago, and you heard about last week the autonomous car killed someone. If you want, we can discuss that later on, because I think, again, I speak about autonomous car, but I don't think at all that this could be the last words in public transportation. Just to tell you what is happening also in AI with respect to words, I'm going to take a very simple game, the most simple game that you ever played in your life, called tic-tac-toe. Remember that game? You have to put cross and circles and align crosses and circles. You all play that game. There is two ways of playing that game. There is the AlphaGo way, the software that defeated the best Go player. And there is the Deep Blue way, the software that defeated Kasparov. They didn't play at all the same way. So AlphaGo is, what is it? I'm not going to explain Go, it would take, nights and nights, so to forget about Go, play tic-tac-toe. So you can play tic-tac-toe in two ways. You could make a kind of statistical compilation of a winning game. So you can say, okay, if I make this move, and I play randomly against someone, departing from this move, what are my chances of winning? And just statistics. I compile the number of win game with respect to the number of lost game. And it's just statistics. And then you will learn statistically that it's better to place cross in the middle. No thinking, no need for any rule understanding of a tic-tac-toe, just a statistical compilation. And believe me or not, this is the way AlphaGo defeated the best Go player of all time, just by playing randomly. This is incredible, and we can do that because we have such powerful machines this day that you can play billions of games in a random manner. It was impossible 10 years ago to do that, but today with GPU, supercomputers, you can do that. In fact, this is not how I teach to play, you can't see that. It's not how I teach to play tic-tac-toe. The way I used to explain software, playing the game, was a min-max software, which is one of the most popular software in AI. And the min-max is very different. You say, okay, I'm going to play there, my opponent will play there, and then I play there, and my opponent will play there. And at the end of the game, I look at all the configurations I obtained, and I put a number on that. And because I am an expert in these games, I know how to evaluate the configurations. For instance, when you play chess, you know that when you lose a queen, that makes you in a kind of bad situation. So we need human expertise to make those AI software playing well. No more. We don't need any more human expertise. And it's even worse. We avoid to call for human expertise. When Lee Sedol played the Go, he was completely surprised to see the winning move of his opponent, because he never saw someone playing like that. And in fact, it's true, because the software just learned randomly to play there. We don't need any human expertise anymore. And the last examples to explain you what's happening in our world, you put a sentence in Google Translate, this stupid sentence, après ce plat de faillot, mon arrière-train sifflera 3 fois, and then you see what is proposed as translation. Okay, you've lost the spirit, you've lost the humor, but it's, okay, no big deal. You certainly use Google Translate. I'm very fan of it. It helps me a lot. You have to understand that for making a translation machine, you need human expertise. You need human linguistics. You need a human that tells you have to make first a syntactic analysis, then a semantic analysis, then try to understand, try to find the meaning of a sentence, and then propose a translation. No anymore. Then what you do, you take a big machine learning things, call it deep learning, it's neural networks. You put the French sentence in the input, and you teach it with any translation that have been done since the beginning of the translation. And you have, you know, an enormous amount of translation that you can use to learn how to translate. But you have no need for human expertise any longer. You have enough on the data to replicate the best human translator in the world. So this is why AI is doing incredible moves these days, because we have powerful machines, we have big data, so we can do a lot of learnings. Okay, so I usually call those two AI the conscious AI and the unconscious AI. And really what's happening these days is that the unconscious AI, the one that doesn't know what it does, but learns to do it by using data, by learning, is really taking the lead more and more. And this is kind of impressive because this, you know, I don't like this one because it's a stupid AI. It's not an intelligent one because we don't even need human intelligence for building this AI. So, and the problem is that the more complex is the problem we try to face, the more it seems that the unconscious AI, the one who learns by itself, also by taking some of the experience of human, the big data, can do a better job than when you ask a human expert to make the software itself, you know, because its expertise is not even needed any longer. And worse than that, it drives the software to bad directions, right? It's better not to use any human expertise any longer. It's a kind of frightening situation here. So, I'm going to jump that here because I don't need that one. I'd like to spend more time on the delicate topics. So first you heard about me telling you that the algorithms are good enough for ruling our lives, okay? And I show you that AI is proposing such incredible algorithms these days. But still that raises a lot of interesting debates with when I'm making this talk in front of philosophers or in front of lawyers. You know, they just have their head resting, they, you know, say, wow, what is this world? Is it possible? The lawyers are disappearing, the politicians are disappearing, anyone is disappearing. And so why are you telling? Is this the world we want? So I'm just anticipate the kind of question you might have in mind and try to answer some of them. So the delicate topic is, there's a first issue, you know, which is, I think, important. What an algorithm can do is prevent, you know, the incivility, whatever you want. Well, in fact, when I discuss with lawyers, they tell me, no, you shouldn't do that. You should let people behave even badly, and then the justice is there for, you know, having those people able to argue about what they did, defending them, and it's a whole theater with lawyers, you know, the prosecutor, the law. And, well, okay, that might be the case for some situation. Perhaps if you are unfaithful with your wife, or if you treat badly your kids, typically an algorithm wouldn't do anything about it. But, you know, consuming energy, driving better, is that such an issue? Why shouldn't we entrust that to algorithms, you know? I remember having a discussion, an argument with Xavier Dieu, who is an important jurist at the ULB, and we were discussing about possibility of preventing a car to start when you're drunk. You know, you get into the car, you're drunk, and you can't even turn on the engine, you know, the car won't start. And I found it a very good idea. Perhaps not tonight, to what I hear about this cocktail thing, perhaps not the best idea for tonight. But in general, statistically, that might be a good idea. He was crazy at me, you know, he was angry at me. He said, there's a kind of word, you know, I don't want this word. I want to be able to take my car even drunk. And perhaps I have an accident, have a problem that I can defend myself, etc., etc. Have your position about it, you know. I'm on the algorithmic side, he's on the, you know, low side, etc. So privation instead of punition, because obviously when you make this incivility or when you make this infraction or whatever, make this defection, obviously you're going to be punished normally in theory, and this punishment is some, you know, some possibility that you prevent you to do it. But isn't that better, even more ethical, to have the algorithm preventing you to do the bad thing instead of, you know, doing the bad thing and having all this justice theater that punish you about it? Laws are into the code. So this is the idea that, you know, when you will have autonomous cars, the problem is not so much the autonomous car or the autonomous minibuses, but are the human drivers, you know. There's an incompatibility between the human drivers and the software driving, because the software driving don't need the human are committing a lot of infractions, but if we get rid of the humans, you know, everything will be fine, and you see that more and more we can imagine algorithms that integrate the good behavior, the public goods. Remember the toilets? This is a very simple and stupid example, but the public good, which is saving our water, saving our electricity, are integrated into the algorithm. So we can imagine a world where, for a lot of threats that we're going through, it's better to have the laws into the algorithms than to have the laws in the classical human way. You know? And there is a lot of other issues that I'd like to jump over, and I want to spend more time on the last one, about who will program the algorithms. Okay, we can agree that perhaps some algorithms can do a better job for ruling our life than human beings, but who will be in charge of writing the algorithms? This is a key point I'd like to spend time about. So how to reconcile algorithmic governance with the old means? The old means is the human governance. I was giving this talk last week in Canada, and you may have heard about that. There was all this Belgian delegation, and there were many ministers, and I was giving the same talk and telling that we should get rid of human governance. We should entrust our life to algorithms. And the Queen was really afraid about that. She came and told me, are you sure this is a good world? This big brother that you're telling us, is that the best world we can imagine for? I say, at least I realize you understood what I say, my Majesty. And so I guess there's 5 necessary conditions for making this work. First, we need to, there's a lot of opportunities. You remember autonomous transport, public transportation, energy consumption. We need to, undertake those incredible big societal transitions. Think about smart grid. I believe that this is a fantastic opportunity. You have wind, you have solar everywhere. It's not like gas, it's not like petrol where you have to, make whole. Wind and solar, you have that anywhere, so you can have them on your roof. But do you think that a robot will put the solar panel on your roof? If you know about the robot 2 days, forget about it. No robot is able to climb your house and put a solar panel on it. But if we decide to move to smart grid, it will create 100,000 of jobs. We have people fearing about the disappearance of a job. AI will substitute for human job. Bullshit. I don't believe a word of that. I believe that if we create the right societal transition, we have a huge amount of opportunity for new jobs. Even in the autonomous buses, we might miss the drivers. Okay, we don't need drivers anymore, but there's a lot of other things that someone can do in these buses, not only driving. You can imagine a lot of interesting things to be done in a bus, not only driving. So we have to train, and this is an important thing, we have to train our politics and the citizens to the algorithm thinking. One of the reasons why people are so afraid about algorithms is because they don't understand, they find it's the devil. In France, most of the books are against this kind of world I'm describing, because they don't understand the difference between algorithm and what the GAFA are doing for algorithm. They fear the GAFA, and then they just make a kind of assimilation and they fear the algorithm. They just, like we say in French, jette le bébé avec l'eau du bain. They shouldn't do so. The algorithm is a fantastic opportunity. This technology is great. It just depends on how you use it. We have to use it for the common goods and not let the GAFA just be in the forefront of this transition. Train our politics, train our citizens. And I keep trying to have, and if you can help me, I'll be delighted. I keep trying to have a course of coding and algorithmic coding for school, obligatory school. In Belgium, it's still not possible. I'm fighting 30 years in order to achieve that. You have a coding school in our obligatory. There's a pact of excellence these days. They don't want to hear anything about that. We wrote chapter, the academic wrote a chapter telling that we have to have coding course in the schools. There is a country, perhaps you might not know it, but there's Estonia. Estonia? Estonia was leading the Europe just even 6 months ago. In Estonia, at 6 years old, the kids begin to learn algorithms, learn to program, and so on. And believe me or not, in the famous PISA challenge, this PISA challenge that we so many times heard about it, in the PISA challenge, the first place is, at least for the European pupils, were taken by the Estonian kids. And so it should certainly not be a coincidence that by learning to program, learning to think algorithmically, you even train your intelligence. In France, I won. I did the same effort, same exercise in France, and now in France, in the Reto and the year before, the previous and the last year, they will have, not this year, but beginning next year, they will have as many courses of algorithm and as many courses of code that mathematics. So France have realized, pushed by Macron, etc., that it's important that our young people know what is code, know what it is an algorithm. There's nothing magic, an algorithm is nothing magic. So a really important thing, and this is part close to my conclusion, we have to promote open source. Our algorithm should be all open. This intermodality algorithm that I do propose should be open. And you know why? Because all of my researchers, they publish their code on GitHub. Perhaps, I guess if there are computer scientists in the room, they know what is GitHub. But GitHub is an incredible thing. GitHub is a completely open source platform. And today, there's nearly 1 billion lines of code on GitHub. And there's 1 million of computer scientists every day connected on GitHub, writing code, publishing code, sharing code. And I really believe that the code that will rule our life, like the blockchain is on GitHub, should be put on GitHub, should be open, should be free to citizens to participate to the writing of the code. And GitHub is a wonderful collaborative achievement in the planet. It's the most incredible collaborative achievement in whole collaborative achievement that you can imagine. Millions of people working together through open codes. You have to obviously call to expertise and technocrats, not only politicians because they don't understand the world of what is an algorithm, but you have to call for expertise and technocrats, obviously. And certainly you have to regain control on those guys. You recognize those four faces. They are Larry Page, Tim Cook, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos, the GAFA guys. Normally you can call it the GAFAM, or even if you put the Chinese together, GAFA, Aliyah, something like that. But we have different ways of calling them. But these guys, they really show us, what they do show us is that, the technology can rule the world. They're ruling the world, with their technologies. They're definitely at the forefront of this transition that I really call. But they're not doing it, obviously, for the common good. And they're invading every part of our life. They're disrupting any part of our technology. For instance, Google Map, deciding about the public transportation. Google Car, deciding about the means of transportation tomorrow. Nest, you remember the story of having the domestic appliance helping us for consuming energy. Who is doing that? Nest. Nest is a Google things. Medicine, your genome, what is the most important software or most important server encoding all the genomes? My23andMe, it's an incredible medical achievement because you have all the genomes put together. Who is ruling it? Google. That is not acceptable. We have, I don't know how, I'm not telling you how, but we have to regain the control. Because right now they have a brains concentration, they have a technological concentration, and they have a data concentration. They concentrate everything. The algorithm is definitely not open source. The data is definitely not open source. And the brain, they do whatever they want with the brains. So, who will write the code? And it's my final thing. You remember, I'll tell you I would conclude on that. Who write the code? I guess we should rely on 3 groups of developers. For any problems, we need some kind of expertise. And also expert in software and in the domain that you want to rule. We need to have citizens, because not all the citizens can be part of the writing. You need to take them randomly, so I'm really a fan of having a random set of citizens participating in the writing of the code. And perhaps we still need a bunch, not too much, of politicians. And you know why? Because I believe that there might be still some ideological opposition between people, and for resolving this kind of, let's say right-left, for instance, egalitarian or more meritocratian, then we need to have election and say, okay, I'd like to favor left type of solution or right type of solution. This might not be completely decided, so you still need some kind of election. And I will finish on, this is really my last slide, because I see that I'm going through my time, so 1 minute, okay, it's my last slide. Just to tell you about an experience which is happening in France in real time. And it's a really nice experience. You may have heard about Parcoursup, if some of you are French or look at the French news. There was an algorithmic platform called Admission Postbac, which exists in France for 3 or 4 years. And this platform decides about the university you're going to register to. So you just finish your school, and in order to, to be taken by one university, the algorithm will decide which one. Okay? Well, it's a strong decision because your life will depend on, again, an algorithmic decision. This software, decided for millions of students for the last 3 or 4 years. And at a certain moment in time, people begin to complain. They say, well, look at that. I made a perfect course during my obligatory school. I was a perfect pupil, having the highest score everywhere. And I didn't get my first choice university. And what happened is that people realized that there was a part of the choice was randomly done. And you can disagree with randomness on that, having a die deciding about, which university you're going to follow. But this is nice egalitarian world, to some extent, on rebat les cartes, like we would say in France before getting into university. So why not? But French was not ready for that. They complain about it. They say, no, this is not the right way of doing it, And why so? Because we opened the code. The code were open, So people began to understand how the decision was being taken. And when they realized that randomness was playing such an important role, they disagreed completely with this code. And so they changed the code and they call it Parcoursup. And Parcoursup is much more meritocratic. So if you make a very nice secondary school, you'll have the best university. Well, it's another word. But at least people are participating in the writing of the code. The same thing for Open Fisca in France. Belgium, we have Tax on Web. Tax on Web, we don't have an open code, but it's, I think Tax on Web should be on GitHub. That is exactly what I'm defending. And the best defender of my vision of algorithmic coding, GitHub, etc., is one woman that I like a lot, which is Elinor Ostrom, who was Nobel Prize, one of the few Nobel Prize of Economy was a woman, and she made an incredible work by defending this idea of common, people, by self-organizing themselves, can write extraordinary governance situation. This is the story of a common governance by Elinor Ostrom. And you believe me or not, Elinor Ostrom believed that in GitHub, in writing open source code, is the best modern example of governance done, in the way she defended. Okay, and thanks for your attention.